Who knows what mysteries wait in the darkness? Who knows what power lies beneath the mind?
Someone's coming.
Who knows what terrors prowl in the underworld? The Shadow knows. An ancient evil returns.
Oh my God.
And the only hope is...
Lamont Cranston.
There is one face he shows the world, and the other he hides in shadow.
I do what I do to fight back the evil inside me, but some part of it is still there.
A mysterious woman shares his powers.
I've always had this feeling that there was this man out there just waiting for me.
And a secret army is at his command.
Report.
Police investigation of murder. Agent advises inquiry.
Extra, extra! Madman threats to blow the city sky high!
You are a barbarian.
With Bova, inside you beats a heart of darkness.
I guess you call it an implosive, explosive submolecular device.
Or an atomic bomb.
Hey, that's catchy.
Join me. I know who you really are.
Alec Baldwin.
You want to see into my eyes?
I'm not afraid of you.
John Lone.
Find him and kill him.
Penelope Ann Miller. And Tim Curry. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows.
David, the sun is shining.
The ice is slippery.
All right, with that, now we can proceed with the show. Welcome to a brand new episode of ReconCinemation. I'm John Diner.
I'm David Munchak.
I'm Brent Hutchins.
And this is the podcast that takes a look back at some of our favorite films from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And we've got a whopper of an episode today. We are going to dial way, way back to the 90s, one of the greatest decades in history, to July 1994. We are looking at The Shadow.
Ooh.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows.
The Shadow knows.
The Shadow knows.
Shadow knows, which we'll get into.
Yes.
Yes.
There's a lot to talk about, that face. And guys, it was season 5 of ReconCinemation rapidly coming to an end. We have one more episode after this one. So can you believe it? It's been
Can't.
it's been
That's
almost
unreal.
a 5-year journey.
I won't.
Congratulations,
Trek.
guys.
It's like Star Trek, a 5-year journey.
Yes, the contracted 5-year journey those space adventurers went on. It's basically what we're doing here.
It's the same thing.
It is.
It's an exploration.
Well, we're looking forward to a fun episode to conclude season 5. But before we get there, let's talk about The Shadow. How did we arrive on The Shadow for this episode?
I think this is your idea.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
It's
you were
me
like,
again.
hey guys, I love The Shadow. We definitely got to talk about The Shadow. It was one of my faves. And then David and I kind of looked at each other and we're like, oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess you're the boss. Let's do it.
I think that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
You were sitting on that gold throne that's 10 feet higher than the rest of our chairs.
Yes.
And you were like decreeing essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, with my scepter.
And we didn't really have a choice.
Yeah, you threatened us with your goblin knife or whatever the hell that thing is that you stole from the set of The Shadow.
Oh yeah, that's with me at all times.
I know. Well, we know.
That's always with you.
Oh my God. Yeah, that knife. There's a lot to talk about with that too. But yeah.
The goblin dagger, whatever.
Well, bring us back to July 1st, 1994. Brent, set the table. What's happening in and around the world in movies? What's going on?
Oh, guys, 1994. It was the summer of O.J. Simpson. I'll tell you that much. Everything that summer was centered around him and his running from the police and his white Bronco and him getting brought up on charges and with his involvement with the murder of Nicole Brown. So that was the biggest, I think, news of all the summers is that just kind of playing out in the background, basically.
The trial, right?
Throughout. The trial hadn't really started. This was like, so in June is when like
the chase
happened.
Yeah.
Like
it was there's that documentary, that ESPN 30 for 30 documentary that's all about that day in June, like everything, all these things in the sports world that was happening.
What did Jose Canseco think? What did Andre Agassi think? We had to know. What was going through their heads?
Yeah, something along those lines.
What was Pete Rose saying?
But there was big stuff going on in like the Rangers and hockey and basketball and golf. There was big events happening all that same day, and all topped or overshadowed by OJ.
Yeah, I mean, I don't recall exactly what was happening. Sports, I didn't see that 30 for 30, but
it's amazing. Highly recommend.
Most of them are pretty darn good, but I don't know what was happening specifically on that day sports wise, but I do know that summer, like the Rangers won the Stanley Cup and the Rockets won their first of two back-to-back championship titles. So, that was happening. And then, let's see, Tanya Harding also was happening around that same time. She got banned from professional ice skating for her involvement in the attack on Nancy Kerrigan. So that was all happening that summer. And Henry Mancini died, the composer. So that's pretty big deal in our world, the ReconCinemation world. And then let's see what else. Lion King released in the theaters that summer, and huge box office success. I think it grossed something like 185 million its opening weekend, which was well above and beyond any other animated features opening weekend box office at the time. Forrest Gump came out that summer, so that ended up winning the Academy Award. But yeah, most of what was happening over the summer and most of the big news was all revolving around OJ and what was going to happen with him and how involved was he in the murder? Was he involved in the murder? The trial started a little bit later than that, but
he did.
Well, that we would find out. We would find out over the course of the next year. But yeah, definitely seems like the glove didn't fit. So
yeah,
maybe not.
Quit. Well, you got to quit.
So yeah, that was big deal though.
It was the documentary was June 17th, 1994. That's the name of the documentary, and it's the date that all this stuff happened. It was so Arnold Palmer played his last round at the US Open before he retired. The 1994 FIFA World Cup began. The New York Rangers had their ticker tape parade. The Houston Rockets and the New York Knicks played Game 5 of the NBA Finals, and Ken Griffey Jr. tied Babe Ruth's home run record.
Is that right? Ricky Henderson also stole his 1100th base, but I don't know if it was on that.
It wasn't that day.
It was that summer.
Yeah, it was right around there. So
yeah. So
all that
exciting time for sports.
The same day as OJ, and was it Al Cowlings drove the white Bronco around with OJ in it.
That's right. One of John's favorite songs also of all time, I Swear by All For One, was number one on the billboards.
You got it.
As we've all affectionately recounted in this podcast, that I used to love to sing the Rent soundtrack, driving to and from Santa Fe and Albuquerque with all my friends in the car. John would likewise be singing I Swear.
Oh, that's me.
It was beautiful.
Wow.
It was beautiful.
That's what you do.
I still get butterflies anytime I think about it.
I quietly retired that song, but I guess it's going to have to come back.
Yeah, well, it needs to. It is time.
Something good comes along. I don't see why you don't focus all your attention on for like 6 months. A great song, a great movie, a great video game, a new
6
a new
months,
friend. It's just like, that's
25
it.
years.
I don't need anything else. Just give me
Either
this
way.
thing for 6 months. And so,
And then never again.
And then just,
retire it for life.
Yeah, it quietly sinks to the background, and you revisit it, or you realize you made a big mistake.
Yep. Sliced bread. I loved it for 6 months. Then,
yeah, never again. Just one whole loaf at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just big.
All right. The Shadow. David, what's happening in this movie? Can you possibly explain it?
It's hard to explain, but I'll try to give you an idea and see if you can keep up. But The Shadow follows a New York socialite, Mr. Lamont Cranston, who uses his psychic powers as the Shadow to hunt criminals and save innocent lives throughout New York City, back in the, I guess, late 30s, early 40s, pre-World War II era. But he comes up against a couple of forces of nature, and specifically the last descendant of Genghis Khan, who possesses similar abilities, and a daring blonde socialite in her own right who has similar abilities. And it's really a confluence of strange events that leads them all to collide in a secret hotel in the middle of New York City
that no one can see.
But he is a bat, and then he's a, today we would say he's like sort of a Batman analog, kind of a scary, mysterious, almost mythical being who strikes fear into the hearts of men. Oh, is that the right hero?
Yep, you got it.
And so it's a rollicking good time.
Oh my God, that it is. Brent, when was the first time you saw The Shadow? Did you catch it in the theaters? You'd see it on home video, or do you watch it just now for the first time?
I definitely saw it when I was younger. I don't recall if I saw it in the theaters or at home first. To be honest, I think when this came out, I was not super excited about it. Just prior to this coming out, The Crow came out, and I was a huge fan of The Crow. And I liked the grittiness, loved the soundtrack. Like, there was just an edge to that movie that seemed to fit more into like where I was at that time, being a little, kid in Houston who loved the Seattle grunge sound and all the alternative music and all that. And so when I saw the trailers for this, it seemed kind of young in comparison, and so I just wasn't super jazzed about it. When I finally did see it, also, like, the comparisons that I felt, and I didn't know much about The Shadow as a comic book before, really, honestly, before doing research for this podcast right now. But I had no idea about the history of The Shadow prior to seeing it when I was younger. And all I really thought about it when I did see it is that, again, this is like a less gritty version of like what Darkman was, which I was a huge fan of Darkman. And, so like, I just was not overly like impressed with this, as younger self. As older self, more times passed. And I think that there are things about it that are really rough, but there are things about it that I actually really like, not so much the storytelling or anything like that, but I really like the look. I like the costumes. I like things like that, like I found myself pretty drawn in by that. Some of the set pieces are pretty rad, but again, overall, not like have not been wowed by this movie.
Got it. All right. David, what about you? Were you a Shadow fan when it first came out?
I did. I remember seeing it in the theater. Based on a comic book property, a pulp stories, really, and radio plays and all of that. I was intrigued by it, but I haven't seen it since I left that theater. 30
you
years
and many
ago.
others.
But you know, I don't even know if I was even paying attention of like I knew who Alec Baldwin was, I guess, but I don't even think you know, like I remembered him from Beetlejuice and stuff, but like it's kind of hard because like Alec Baldwin looks like grotesquely different every 2 years if you really look at every
You're not wrong.
like every photo of
You
him.
look at Beetlejuice, Alec Baldwin,
Yeah.
and you know 30 Rock, Alec Baldwin. They are different people.
I mean, I get him confused with some of his brothers all the time because, like, I feel like he's looked like each one of them at some point in his career, and I'm always, oh, is that Alec? Is that Steven? Which one is that?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so I saw it then. I you know, I kind of appreciate it for what it was. Like it's kind of like a Batman Returns-esque, like, but it's just like it's always second tier. It's never like it never went far enough to really capture my interest, like to continue with it. Like it didn't have like sort of the intrigue. The humor only went just so far that you know, I realized watching this, like, boy, if they really leaned into the campiness, like they maybe would have had a different product here and might have been an interesting like movie, but it's uneven in that way. So yeah, I can see why I was just like, yeah, cool. The Shadow. It was, you know, it was my grandparents' hero, right? Like if he's from 1930, right? Like it's not, and you know, to their credit, sticking to the style, aesthetics, the time period, all of that. You know, I appreciate that instead of trying to like update and change everything, like keep it but it doesn't really work for a modern audience, I think, because in the 90s, it was a very different place. New York was a different place. America is different. The world's different. So it's like, it's a little weird seeing what, like, I don't know, what it all was as a complete product.
I feel like this could be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the right people were involved and it was done well, it could be really pretty awesome. But the execution, this version and the execution of this version I feel like a pretty big miss.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misses here.
Yeah,
totally. It is a bit of a what if, you know, what if they had done this? What if they had done that? You know, what if they hadn't done a lot of the things they did, you know, they chose to do in this one. I have to tell you, though, I loved this movie when it came out. I absolutely loved it. And I don't know exactly why. I mean, this was summer of 94, so this is about 2 years before I really, like, I think my taste in films started growing and maturing. So I was definitely into the, you know, the popcorn movies, the blockbustery movies, which this was one of those, not successfully, but it was attempting to be. And I actually saw it out here in LA with my uncle, and I like watched it. I made him take me to it, and I loved it, and I could see that he did not love it. And I was like, let's go immediately back in to the next show and watch it again. We didn't, but I wanted to.
Wow.
You wanted to watch it immediately.
Yeah. I was like almost as into it as I was Batman when it came out.
Wow.
And
I kind of get it. Sort of, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's obviously there's a lot to talk about with comparing it specifically to Batman.
Sure.
But the thing is, I think the problem was that this was trying to do the Batman formula and the Batman style so closely to the 89 Batman, and which was only 5 years previously, but so much had changed.
Mm-hmm.
And Brent, I think you brought up a really, really good point about The Crow and The Crow coming out, which I don't remember how well it did box office wise, but definitely home video and like cult status and word of mouth. It was huge.
I mean, I saw The Crow like 3 times in the theater. Like, I loved The Crow. It was a huge, I mean, I liked just also like kind of the gothic nature of the making of it. And, you know, like Brandon Lee getting shot and all that, like all of it kind of drew me in.
Well, with the whole, like with the grunge movement happening, you know, in between Batman and this and The Crow, you know, it was getting, I think it was the superhero thing was starting. People wanted to go deeper, and even Batman the animated series took it further than the Batman movies did. So there was, I think, people, as far as superheroes goes, were looking for something more, something a little edgier, and this was like going right back to that Superman, Batman, very kind of simple, on the level storytelling that was not as complex as.
Yeah, it felt like a step backwards.
Yeah,
sure.
really, it did. So yeah, you can kind of see why it didn't take off. At the time, I was really confused. I was like, this movie is great. Why don't people like it?
Well, it also starts really weird. Like I watched it twice getting ready for this, for the podcast. The first time, like, I kind of just sort of powered through it. But the second time, I don't know why, but the second time I watched it, I found myself a lot more interested, but it takes a minute. And so, like, the beginning is
nonsense,
weird. It doesn't make any kind of sense. It's like super confusing and like awkward, like just doesn't, like, the acting doesn't, like, none of it. And there's powerful actors strewn about the beginning, but like, it's like, it doesn't connect in any way. And it doesn't really feel coherent. And then the fact that you have to give, like, there's the opening and then the explanation of the training, and then it gets to New York. It's like, this is all sorts of messed up. But then like, once he got into New York and once, like, the story started to unfold a little bit, again, bad acting, the makeup is terrible, like, all sorts of stuff is happening. But I did find myself getting more and more into it. And I do feel like the final battle is kind of fun, like,
it's kind of fun,
and like shit like that going on. I'm like, this isn't like a total waste, but like, it's more, there's just a lot of pieces that they should have really focused more attention on.
Yeah, and it's had such a horrible reputation over time, and I think that's why I wanted to talk about it on the shows, because I loved it for so long, and I never saw, really, because I never watched it again after those 3 times in the theater, progressively each time having much less and less of an audience in those in the crowd. But I never really looked at, like, why what is it that's not working in this movie? It was like, I always liked it, everyone else didn't, but now watching it again, I can totally see it. But before we continue down that road, let's just catch everybody up who maybe isn't familiar with The Shadow. So it was a radio program created in 1930 by Walter B. Gibson, and it was, at the time, I mean, there was no television, so
yeah, I mean, this guy, The Shadow, was around before Superman, before Batman. Like, I mean, a lot of Batman is based on this character,
right?
So, like, he kind of came from this.
Yeah, totally similar in style and storytelling as the Batman stories. He's a crime fighter. He's a detective. He is, he's got multiple personas that, the Lamont Cranston, and we're not going to go too far down that road either, because there are several characters that he plays, and then years later, it's like, then it's revealed that he's actually not Lamont Cranston, he's some other guy, and there's a whole lengthy backstory there. But who puts on a persona to become the Shadow, who uses these, I guess you would say, psychic powers to manipulate people's minds and to solve these crimes. And visually very similar looking to Batman, and the way they pose, the way they, the wardrobe, as we started seeing it. Eventually became a magazine in, I believe, the late 1940s. So there was a visual element to it as well. But by the 50s, The Shadow, they'd pretty much stopped making the Shadow stories, and Batman and Superman had taken over, and Marvel and DC Comics were on the rise and kind of took over. And there's been limited Shadow stories since. And it's kind of a forgotten character other than this movie. There's really, like, my dad referenced the Shadow all the time. It was always saying, who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow knows. He would say that like constantly. It was very annoying. But
I feel like more recently there's been a few runs. I think Dynamite took over the publishing of the Shadow, and there's been more recently. Like there's the Shadow Year One, which is kind of an origin type story.
But there's no buzz about the Shadow. It's like there's no popularity to it at all.
No, considering like the roots of where the character stems from, like he does not have nearly the fanfare as like a Superman or Batman or anybody like that. I mean, you're right. He's pretty forgotten, I think, by the majority of people.
Well, this is like the stuff you'd see back with the radio plays and the pulp comics and stuff. It's like it's like 2000s TV where you had the mentalist and the blind cop and the bakery nurse, and like everyone's like has a specialty and does good things, and they're like, it's very specialized kind of thing. So you'd have Shadow, you'd have what's the Billy Zane classic where
the Phantom. I would get the Phantom and this mixed up all the time.
Yeah, I thought they were basically the same.
I think all the time. You have the same problem in both movies. They're very parallel.
Yeah. Well, and you got it again. It's like, and what's funny is like Tim Burton said, I'm gonna go back to Batman's origins. I'm also gonna take the campiness of the Adam West show. I'm going to combine them and make them a little weird, and this is my Batman 1989.
Well, yeah, and inject Frank Miller's Batman Returns. Was it not Batman Returns? It's
The Dark Knight Returns.
The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, like there's definitely a lot of that added to it, but it's like, so like Burton like knew how to make a cohesive like visual story and narrative that worked. And then there was sort of like, you can just sort of tell like there's this scramble, like, wait, where else can we get properties? Let's make a movie on cheap, but like we can maybe, we do it well enough, we'll make a sequel. Like, back then it wasn't like you didn't talk franchise, like you didn't talk 3-picture deal.
Right.
You made something that would make money, that would help your studio for the next year. And then if it did really well, but that's sort of that same thing. So you'd had like the Spectre and like Captain Marvel, I think, was like a original pulp hero, and like people that had like very specific...
The Rocketeer is another one, right?
Rocketeer, yeah.
But I feel like as a film was more successful than the Shadow and the Phantom were.
I thought the Rocketeer was not successful. Maybe it just wasn't as successful as
maybe I just remember
Disney wanted it. But
yeah, that's probably true. They didn't make a sequel or anything.
Right.
I put money that Rocketeer at least made comparatively more money than the Shadow, but I wouldn't know off the top of my head.
I remember enjoying it a lot more, but I don't know. It seems less Batman and more Superman.
A little more it's comparative, which came out in 1991 and made about 46 mil. So yeah, Rocketeer only had its
same ballpark. Yeah.
So like you got to give them credit for like trying to resurrect old intellectual property.
Oh yeah, it was
and try something.
Well, I don't think
Art Deco style, like throwback. Yeah, it was
like popular. They didn't know how to like what story to tell for the more modern characters, the Spider-Mans, the X-Men characters. They, still obviously with so many of the DC characters, they've struggled to successfully tell their stories. But so they're like going back to the well over and over and over, and each time Rocketeer, the Shadow, the Phantom, none of them are working. And then you've got the Crow, which is a completely modern and huge hit.
Yeah. Dick Tracy's another one, like they're all like they're all like right in a row, and none of them really.
But Dick Tracy, so the difference with Dick Tracy was that was right on the heels of Batman. So I think people weren't.
Well, and Madonna was in it. Like there was like some really big names at the time.
But I don't think people were... James Caan for a second. The old Godfather reunion.
But
And
I think that was still not. I mean, I think it probably did better than most of them because it was riding off the success of Batman. But like, I think that the overall feeling of people who had seen it was that it wasn't very.
I think Dick Tracy now is like unwatchable.
Right.
It's really hard to sit through that.
Well, and like, you know, all these things come from a more or less because Dick Tracy, I think, well, he's a comic character, but I'm sure had a radio show too. Like, all these like old things required the listener to have an imagination. Like, to hear a narrative of the Shadow doing shit and messing with men's minds, like, and using your own imagination to follow along, like that works a lot better. But then changing it to a more visual medium, it's a little like, and that's where experimentation came from. They didn't know how to tell these stories with the action to, like, it probably worked in the still frame of a comic or a strip, but then going to a film, it's like, oh, film is basically real people doing shit. Like, so how do you take this stylized thing and then transform it into like modern day without it looking and sounding silly? And they didn't. You almost don't know it if it's silly until you see it. Like, it's like, oh, this is kind of weird. Like, this doesn't really, and it doesn't resonate with a modern audience in the 90s who are, you know, they just enjoyed Terminator 2 a couple of years ago. Like, you know, things have changed.
Yeah, and Jurassic Park, you know,
and Jurassic Park, like things things are messed up now.
Well, and it, you know, I mean, it feels like it's just kind of a cheap grab to try and steal some of that success from Batman, right? Like, I mean, they're just trying to recapture that. And I think if it was less influenced by that and like had a chance to be its own thing, like some air to breathe and not just be like some attempt to recapture something that it's not, then it may have turned out a lot better. I mean, it couldn't have turned out much worse.
And like trying to sort of mimic and ape what it came from, like, and not translating it, like, but also, like, you know, I think everyone would say like, oh, they took this property, they Hollywood changed everything, and it's weird. So it's like, what do you strike the balance, right? Instead of like, so, you know, that no one's ever going to be happy. But like, again, you'd have to grow up in the 30s to really appreciate a Shadow movie, and it's 60 years later, so it's just not as catchy as what modern audiences wanted to see.
I think part of it is the overall tone of the movie, because Batman so successfully had that serious tone with like a couple of lighthearted moments, but overall the tone of the movie was dark, kind of depressing, serious, and heavy. This always felt light, and I don't think it works when you play it light. And like there's scenes where the energy is just so like high between Alec Baldwin and Penelope Ann Miller, and then there's you know, towards the end of the movie where the Shadow or Lamont Cranston and Shiwan Khan have that like banter back and forth, and it's like a joke, you know, it's like they're not playing it serious almost at all.
I traveled to this country in Genghis Khan's holy crypt to absorb his power in 3 days. The entire world would hear my roar and willingly fall subject to the lost empire of Shanking. That is a lovely tie, by the way. May I ask where you acquire it?
Brooks Brothers.
Is that Midtown?
45th and Madison. You are a barbarian.
Well, John Lone kind of is, but Baldwin certainly isn't. So,
but he's a better comedian than he is a lead. But like, you know,
not now, not
at the time. I mean, at the time,
Alec Baldwin can. He's a slightly whimsical, I would say, at best.
Now, are you talking now?
No, then.
Yeah.
Today, he figured out how to be funny. Like,
right. Well, there's all right, let's talk about Alec Baldwin, because that's obviously the big, huge piece here is, you know, we're right in the middle of the experiment of Alec Baldwin, not just as a leading man, but as a major action star. You know, they were trying to get him on the level of, you know, Bruce Willis and Stallone and I wouldn't say Schwarzenegger, but like that, and Harrison Ford. I think Harrison Ford is like a good comp, or what they wanted.
Yeah,
him to
I
be
think
a
Harrison.
good comp.
I think yeah, Alec Baldwin has a gravitas that he brings to things that you would do instinctively think he could be an action star guy. I could follow him through a dangerous story, but did it work?
Yeah.
In Hollywood
at the time. So
sorry, Alec is calling.
I'm
Alex calling you. Oh,
yeah. Let me just tell. Dude, I'll call you back. We're just hanging out, recording the podcast. Yeah, it's going great. All right, well, yeah, don't worry. Okay, cool.
I mean, I don't know. Like,
he checks in with me once in a while.
He's pretty hilarious. He's pretty funny in Beetlejuice. Like,
yep, but that's right in the beginning.
Married to the Mob, Working Girl, Talk Radio. All those are kind of comedies, right?
He works.
Yeah.
Is he quipping though? Is he quippy and silly? Like he gets his moments in all those movies, I think. But he's funnier as the straight man to play sort of absurd, like.
Right. But that within itself is like requires some comedic chops and timing, and it's
right.
Yeah, he's not incapable.
No, I don't remember him in Great Balls of Fire, but then
that's just a small. It's a small.
The next big thing is Hunt for Red October, and that's like when it's like, okay, we're gonna try and make this guy like the leading man.
Exactly.
Right?
That's the move. The Hunt for Red October is the move where they Hollywood is pushing him up to that star status.
Yeah, and they try it for the next 5 years.
Yeah, look, I mean.
And it fails.
Miami Blues, great movie, but that's more of a, I don't want to say an art house movie, but more of an indie style movie, not the high profile of Hunt for Red October at all.
But
then
Prelude to a Kiss, I remember being a big deal, but it wasn't, I don't think it was. It's not Hunt for Red October. Like Hunt for Red October was like a huge
movie. But the Marrying Man in 91, not a hit. Prelude to a Kiss in 92, not a hit. Malice 93, not a hit. Getaway in 94, not a hit. And that all leads to The Shadow.
Yeah.
But they weren't bombs, right? Like, so they're not breakout huge movies, right? But they're movies people saw, I feel
people
like, right?
saw, but some of them didn't even, I don't think even made money. I mean, Getaway was like a huge disaster.
They're not successful enough for you to believe that this guy's a draw. Like, he's a lead man draw, right? Like, he's not bringing people into the box office the way they would want.
Well, yeah. I mean, the Getaway would probably be the big experiment, right? That's pretty actiony.
Yes.
Right? But like, I don't know. Yeah, I think the rest are more narrative, drama, action, like versus like heroic gun battle action.
Well,
right?
and look, he walked away from the Jack Ryan series. I mean, that was his. He started it with Hunt for Red October and was supposed to continue playing that role and
gave it to Harrison Ford.
Walked out of Patriot Games, which was another huge hit for like look at Harrison Ford's track record.
Oh, yeah.
It's hit after hit after, I mean, major hits like the Indiana Jones movies, but then you've got peppered in there Working Girl, you've got Patriot Games, you've got
I finally watched Air Force One last night with my pops.
That's nice.
Yeah. Right?
David's favorite movie.
How much fun did you have in the summer of 97?
It was fun.
Right? Fucking great.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford kicking
ass. I mean, there's some pretty hilarious, like, laughable things in there, but yeah, it was fun. Harrison Ford's a badass.
It's a great movie. It's so fun.
Harrison in the like 80s, throws out more artistic movies like Witness and Mosquito Coast.
Yeah, but he's also got Indiana Jones. I mean,
I know, I know, but it's a good balance for him.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Versus Alec is like very up and down and inconsistent and has yet to find a rhythm, that's working at this point. I don't think he doesn't. I mean, yes, he does Glengarry Glen Ross, and that 5-minute scene is amazing, but he's not the lead of that movie, and I don't think he would find it until years later when he started doing comedy and finding that was really what he's really, really good at. Especially with 30 Rock really cemented, like, okay, this is what he's good at. And now within that, he's done dramatic things like the cooler and, many roles that
Right.
were like the drama or action, but he's also not the sole lead.
Yeah.
So I think that's
Right.
part of it. Like, this is the last movie that he is the lead. It is just him above the title. It's not shared with, with Steve Martin or with whoever else. The rest of his career, he would have that. It's like even 30 Rock, it's not just him. It's Tina Fey. It's, it's Tracy Morgan. It's it rotates around. So
Yeah,
not
he's
just on his shoulders.
He's a great part of a company, right? Like, I mean, playing off people and I mean, yeah, 30 Rock, I think for sure is kind of what reintroduced him to mass audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it was sort of a, and he was only going to be on a couple episodes in that first season, and they only wanted him to be around a little bit. It was going to be about the writer's room because, nothing's more interesting to writers than the life of writers. And but then it was like, oh, we have absolute freaking gold when we give Alec all these lines and jokes, and it disrupts everything. So yeah, and then he was him and Tina Fey were the star. Like what a weird combination, right? Like how Tina Fey is toe to toe because she's funny, and then she elevates Alec Baldwin, and then he elevates her. It's like who would have thought that was going to happen?
Well,
That's
and
insane.
it was, and before 30 Rock, it was his appearances on SNL.
Yeah.
Sweaty balls, like by the late 90s when really the mid 90s. I mean, the Canteen Boy with Adam Sandler, which is completely horrible and inappropriate. But at the time it was like, oh, it's funny,
Did he play, was it Alec Baldwin with Phil Hartman and they were like gay scout masters or something?
Yeah.
Like it was so, and it's wild because they like hardcore kiss each other, and at the time it was like, that's like, you weren't doing stuff like that.
Yeah,
so it had like a shock value, but they went 100% committed to the joke.
Yeah,
and that's what he proved himself time and time again with every comedic skit.
It was like what is working for him that I don't think he even realized at the time. It's the comedy. But here we are with The Shadow, and the director, Russell Mulcahy. Now, that's a name anybody listening to this show should be familiar with, although we haven't covered it yet.
Oh,
he is the director of Highlander.
Right.
It's
and
probably
Highlander too.
Yeah, and Highlander too. Yes.
What's it called? The Quickening?
The Quickening. Or I forget there's the Renegade version, which is the one they tried to fix all the mistakes. But now, Russell Mulcahy was a huge music video director right when music videos were really getting big in the early 80s. So he did Hungry Like the Wolf. He did a number of the Duran Duran music videos, which were, back then they were really movies in, 3 minutes.
Video Killed the Radio Star, right? That's another one of his, I think.
Yeah, he did videos for Elton John. He did videos for Rod Stewart and Billy Joel, Fleetwood Mac. There were so many that he was one of the top music video directors, but it's a different kind of storytelling, and his style is very visual, and I think that's like one of the coolest things about all of his movies, really. Highlander, I'll say Highlander 2. The Shadow, they all have interesting visuals. The lighting style, it's kind of like a film noir-ish kind of look.
Definitely.
The pacing of it, like he's got cool tracking shots, and he knows how to like work the camera. But going beyond that, that's where Tim Burton made Batman work, is because Tim Burton's a writer. He's been telling stories since he was 10 with Frankenweenie, or 12 or something, and really knew how to craft a story beyond just the visuals. And I think Russell was coming into a project that didn't have a script that was maybe wowing everybody. It was really kind of taking the formula of Batman, and I don't think his visuals did enough to take it to where it could have been. Highlander is a very people either love Highlander or hate it. But
the first Highlander,
the first
one's all right.
I love the first one.
First one's pretty good.
2, everything goes bananas between the studio and creatively they completely changed everything. And
yeah, they lost me at 2, and then I wouldn't come back until Mario Van Peebles. And
there you go. 3. That's 3.
Was it 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that the
yeah,
one
they
that...
kind of got back on track with 3, but it was like, man, they had really killed it, the movie franchise. And the TV show, the USA Network's TV show, was fine. That was good.
Yeah, it was Adrian Paul headlined. He was a cousin to Connor McLeod.
Yes.
Christopher Lambert's character. Christopher Lambert showed up once or twice.
He did, right?
And then they had a final movie where they team up and then there's a showdown. So
yeah, so
I mean,
it was like
that show was on for a while, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
5 or 6 years maybe at least, and then there was even a spin-off called Raven, I believe, with one of the supporting characters from that show. But yeah, that movie tied it up. That was really Adrian Paul's movie but Lambert was like hardcore, I believe, in it.
Yeah.
And then it's still, they tried like a TV movie, I want to say in like 2008, and it was like in the future-ish but it was still Adrian Paul's character, and like they were using like VR headsets and weird things. I watched the first 5 minutes. I'm like, nope, I'm out. Nope.
Yep.
Don't worry about it. It's all right.
And we're done.
Don't have to do it.
But the whole thing is weird because the whole purpose is, there can be only one, that it's all about the tournament till there's one Highlander left, right? That's the end of the first movie. So then there's all these sequels where there's still all these other Highlanders. So how did that? But they always try to come up with like creative ways around it, like making them aliens in the second movie. And
but you think you're the one until you realize the planet is so large that there's probably more out there.
Yeah.
And new immortals were born all the time.
Yeah.
Because that was what the story dictates. That's what the TV show or the next movie dictates. Nope, you didn't get them all.
Yeah.
Just like all the Jedi were wiped out in Star Wars, but it turns out there's like
millions still.
The notable ones are in the dozens, and then beyond that there's lots more. But which also makes sense because hey, you can go into hiding anywhere. It's a big galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mostly on Tatooine.
Mostly, yeah. There's a lot of Jedi action on Tatooine.
In the deserts of Tatooine. But so Russell Mulcahy really, and after this movie, he really doesn't do too many more, mainstream movies before he kind of, I don't know if he like chose to go back to videos or what, but it's an interesting career there.
Yeah.
The rights for The Shadow got picked up by producer Martin Bregman in 1982. Now he was one of Al Pacino's like main like he produced Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon, and Scarface, and possibly one other one. But so I wonder if at one point in time Al Pacino was in the cards to play The Shadow. Now picture that. That would be very interesting, seeing Pacino as a superhero in general. But
oh boy, yeah, that'd be something. I mean, there's so many stylistic choices that I don't necessarily think they all work with Alec Baldwin at the lead, but like with the laughing and sort of the visual style of the Shadow and all that, like the Shadow isn't really an imposing figure. He's supposed to be mysterious. So it's an interesting thing, like to put like a powerful quote unquote leading man, like get him in there, and then like really you only really experience Alec Baldwin being Lamont, for the most part. He's the guy who only sleeps in tuxedos. This guy, there's 3 sleeping scenes, I think, and he's always in his like tuxedo. Like he just can't get comfortable. He's just got to be a guy in this drinking brandy or falling asleep with his suspenders over his shoulders.
Of course, right. You don't.
I mean, during the week, yeah, but on weekends,
aren't you coming home from rich gala events 6 nights of the week?
Yeah, 6 nights of the week.
Yeah,
Saturdays. It's exhausting.
Saturdays I take it easy. I put my jammies
on. Can we get into the mechanics of the beginning of the movie and the origin, the background?
Do we have to?
I'm very confused about Lamont Cranston. So
I just want to know why the mystic who wants to train Lamont lives in Cobra Command, because
there's definitely a bit of Cobra Commander happening here. So Lamont Cranston is a rich upper class New York socialite, right? Basically, then he vanishes at some point and goes to Tibet to be a warlord.
Yeah, but like, was he probably conscripted in World War One? Like, did we have drafts back then? To be honest with you, like, did the
I
US
don't think so.
So, but it seems like it was like post-war, World
Yes.
War One, that he took advantage of it and became a murderous warlord. But we don't know anything
Murder,
about him
like
before.
a horrible warlord who just slaughters and kills villagers and people and
does not have nail clippers.
No. Talking about that look in the beginning,
what the hell is going, dude?
And
the beginning of this movie is so bat crazy.
I will say it was a pleasure to see James Hong and Al Lung again in the beginning. But
sure,
what's the racism level? What's the temperature on the racism in that?
I need a Chinese person to tell me if it's racist or not. I don't know. Like, I mean, it seems
feels
racist,
like it is, but
is it like malicious racism, or is it just stereotypes, or what do we?
I think it's just 90s stereotypes. It's not, I don't think there's any intention to be racist, but it's
tacky as fuck.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna say it's honoring Chinese culture or anything like that. I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but
no.
So then how does he get back to being, to becoming Lamont Cranston again?
7 years in China, learning under the tutelage, and then which we get only in a text thing. It's so weird to have a montage sequence replaced by just a scroll. And then over the next 7 years, he figured out how to be the Shadow. What? It's weird.
Yeah. And he has to repay his service by finding the evil. I don't even know, dude. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
it's so bad.
It's wild.
It's such a horrible way to start the movie.
Yeah. I think by the end, the intention is that Lamont Cranston is, when he returns and becomes the Shadow, the goal is to, he's trying to atone for his sins, and he's trying to make up for all the wrongdoings that he's done, and I don't think that message comes across at all.
There's no character development for him to be trying to atone or having some sorrow or grief over what he's done, and that his duty is to be this hero and anything like that. But it's just no, he was this kind of guy who was murderous and crazy, and then now he's reformed, and this is why he does stuff, but we don't have to talk about that any further.
Yeah.
He just does it.
So in the comic books, it's weird because I was his origin is a little different in that, at least what I heard is that, so it's World War I. He becomes a bit of a mercenary afterwards. He's kind of this bad dude. He does end up getting trained by the Tulku guy and has to repent, but Lamont Cranston is some playboy that is from New York, and the Shadow is not Lamont Cranston, but Lamont Cranston takes off and gallivants around the world, and this dude just comes in and has a deal with Lamont to be Lamont in New York as his secret identity while he is.
Well, and he clouds everyone's minds to make them think that he's Lamont, right?
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
His special powers, it's interesting because he doesn't really have. He has the ability to hypnotize people with his ring. He has this network of people, which we see in the movie. There are the ones that are all wearing the rings.
Once he saves them, they become
part of his team, and then. His biggest superpower is that he is extremely smart And so he's very strategic and very crafty and witty and able to like outthink his adversaries, right?
Yeah.
But like he doesn't have, like, he's not like, there's not a whole lot of hocus pocus to his superpowers aside from like him being able to hypnotize people with his ring.
And you do that by, well, in the movie at least, you do that by leaning backwards until your face falls in shadow and your eyes start glowing.
Yeah. Your eyes start mirroring. They use mirror, like it was right. It's like mirror for lenses.
I kind of dug it. It's not like I feel
like the eyes. Yeah.
I'm gonna try it at my next meeting, at my next work meeting. I'm gonna try this technique and see how well it works.
I haven't looked into it, but I can only imagine those contacts were not soft; they were hard, and they also
they
were
could not be comfortable.
And he probably couldn't see through them. So like it was. I don't know, maybe. I mean, he could have, but it just seemed like, wow, like they're going for it, like they're making again, I appreciate this like attempt to like do something a little weird. I just don't think this movie gets weird enough. This movie needs to be weirder.
It doesn't. It also doesn't get emotional enough, because in Batman we totally, I mean, we are told time and again about Bruce Wayne's backstory and the loss of his parents and emotionally what that did.
Yeah, it's tragic.
It's tragic, and that's what drives him to become Batman and what fuels him everything he does. Here, we don't have that at all.
No, he's introduced as a whatever he's introduced as, but it's like nobody gives a shit about this guy.
Yeah.
Like nobody cares.
And then you're just supposed to care.
I'm not rooting for him at any point.
Yeah.
They don't earn the audience's support in any way with what they do.
Yeah, it almost relies on you to like know about like Batman and know about these like characters already. Just sort of like, oh yeah, it sort of makes sense. He's a mysterious anti-hero vigilante. He's kind of a rumor. No one really knows if he's real, like, and all that.
Sure.
And his alter ego is rich and has all the resources, but like he always relies on a cab driver of New York City, like
Peter Boyle.
Boyle comes. In a moment's notice, he could be cross town.
He's there
for all we know, making a drop off. I don't know, but he's there every time Cranston needs him.
And it's I think something that was a stylistic choice that they went with, but I don't know. It felt too old timey. Was so much of this movie is on a backlot, right? Like very obviously a backlot. That's fine. We've seen that many times.
I think that adds kind of to the Art Deco feel of it all, though.
Sure,
like
of course.
For me, like it kind of works in a weird.
Yeah, the backlot part works. What bumped me was two things in particular: the backdrops that they would use, especially in that bridge sequence in the beginning. I'm like, guys, I feel like I can see the curtain. Like it doesn't feel like you're really there. Like there's something about I don't know what unless I was there, I couldn't say exactly what it was, but I never had that. Like I had that feeling like I'm on a stage. I'm on a stage or a set with a backdrop that's rigged by rigging grips.
Yeah, as much as I like the sets and a lot of the art direction of this, like the matte painting, the background and matte painting team was atrocious. Like all of them are really
well, and a lot of it is, I think there's, that fault can go around because. Sure. You can only make a matte painting look like a matte painting or a backdrop look like a backdrop, but it's got to be well lit to blend it in. And, I don't think there was, I thought the cinematography was fine, but that part was not working. Like the club,
right?
I thought the club looked beautiful, great set, very much felt like The Mask, but the other thing was the in the cab scenes and any driving scene, that rear projection was such an old time thing. And I think that's what they were going for, but it just, it didn't work for me. It took me out.
I didn't mind it too much. I top of the Empire State Building though, I mean, with the scenery and the scrim, you saw the folds at the top of the backdrop. Like, I mean,
yeah, they
didn't even bother to try to fix that. Like there were, like, so you see like some lines in the sky, the pale blue sky, for that. And and all that backlot work. I mean, it's the same two blocks, whether no matter what they're shooting. Is that Paramount, by the way?
Universal.
It is Universal.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I mean, I knew it's a Universal movie, but I've never been to Universal's.
Most of those backlots look similar, but there's some distinct things about each of them that.
Yeah.
I think this one had kind of the largest space for some of those intersections. So.
Well, and I guess this
clock
backlot
tower didn't show up.
No clock tower. Yeah.
Well, this backlot is now burned. It was burned down and replaced at this point, right?
Well, at this point, it is now.
In modern times. It's burned down and replaced.
Yeah,
it has since burnt down and been replaced. Yes.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
But it's the same block by the theater and that restaurant and that alleyway. It's the same. They just keep going the same direction too. They don't even reverse like the direction, because I'm sure it's not good for what they're trying to do. But yeah, this is a heavy stage and backlot movie, just like Batman Returns, right?
Yeah.
I guess even the original Batman, it's all in the Warner Brothers lot. I mean, both of those movies are not, so it's like which can fit that aesthetic. But I think you're right, like Brent, like with like the art, you appreciate the art direction and what they're going for, and like but it's missing the mark stylistically when you can tell the matte paintings and the backdrops are not doing it. Like they're
right.
It's it's a fascinating look, honestly. It's like you're realizing you can't sort of half-ass this. You have to put in a little more time and money to make this look better, to really make audiences come in, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They had a $40 million budget, so in 1994, that's not a low budget movie. So
yeah.
Well, they probably had to
spend it on
some
nose prosthetics.
Nose prosthetics, and I was gonna say some of these very familiar faces that we keep seeing in many movies between Al Leung and James Hung. You got John Kapelos on the bridge.
Jonathan Winters.
You've got Tim
Peter
Curry.
Ian McKellen.
You got the dad from Alf. Come on.
Max Wright is just there. Ethan Phillips, who would be on Enterprise in the future.
And Werewolf.
And Werewolf,
also.
Of course. Yep.
Yes.
I mean, Ethan Phillips has had a storied career, but No,
but a lot of familiar faces. And but okay, so the Shadow, so he gets these powers, right? And he comes back to New York and he's got to do good and atone for his sins, right? So what is the mechanics of when he wants to become the Shadow, his face changes? Is that his real face? Is that a disguise? Why? If he's clouding people's minds, why does he have to change his face? Why if he looks so much like Billy Baldwin as the Shadow, why didn't they cast Billy Baldwin?
Right.
Hard to tell.
hot off the heels of Backdraft, pun intended.
It's almost like they should have just did him like a cowboy and put the mask just over the nose, and then you're just dealing with the eyes.
Yeah.
And let that nose protrudes so much and takes up all that space. And it's just it's very distracting because like Alec Baldwin doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but ultimately, I mean, it makes him look more graphic, right? Like, I mean, and that's probably why they did it, right? And is Batman's nose pointy in the movie? I can't remember.
Yeah, but he's wearing a cowl, so it doesn't matter.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, but the silhouette,
you never see the side silhouette of Batman. You always see the from behind with the ear.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But with the Shadow's nose, the bridge is gigantic. Like the nose doubles in size. So he does, which that is pretty much the primary feature that'll throw people off. Like, so it's like you can it changes his silhouette. So I get, like, if he had to be seen, at least he's creating that illusion for what he is. But mostly he wants to be invisible, or I guess he can physically become shadows.
Well, yeah, but he becomes invisible. So what's the point of? I just don't. All of it doesn't make sense. I guess the Shadow knows.
The Shadow knows what he's doing.
The Shadow knows.
He has layers to protect himself.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And why is everything so funny? When
Like, why is he always
constantly
laughing?
Yeah, that arrogant thing of like to scare people is like, boy, what a choice that did not. It probably worked in the radio show. It does not work in this movie.
No,
like,
not at all. It's like one of those carryovers. You know, I feel like you would see it in, yeah, like you said, like from a radio show, you'd hear it in Dick Tracy, and you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, but totally doesn't work.
Yeah, it's constant. It's his calling card, like of just like messing with people. It's just laughing at whatever they say. But he gets injured. Other than the opening thing on the bridge, he gets injured on every single encounter after that. Like there's blood everywhere.
Yeah,
like he can't handle it.
At the end, when he chooses to confront Tim Curry's character, like inside, where was it? It was inside, a water tank,
a water tower. Like what was going on?
That
had a very Batman TV show feel to it to me. Like
Definitely,
that whole scene. I'm like, oh, okay, we're going that deep with the Batman.
Yeah.
And he gets shot like twice there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then he's totally revealed.
Well, and the fight scene before that, where he's like the shadow fight, and they shoot the crossbow bolt into his coat shoulders to like pin him to the wall. Like, what the fuck is going on here? Oh yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, with the crossbow bolts, like it's like he peeled himself out of the shadow, so he's projecting. So like he physically can actually become a shadow, I guess, without it. But that's the only time you see it. Like, you know, he's invisible, but also, and like the opening scroll tells you he becomes in the shadows.
Yeah,
it's the only time you see it.
He can make everything disappear but his shadow, right?
Right. But then like
something like that.
But the effect, the visual effect of the crossbow bolts, it almost seems like he's
became the shadow. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
It's weird. It doesn't communicate
confusing
that he's physically there.
So the rules of the superhero are clunky here. You know, it's very clear like what Superman and Batman doesn't have powers, but what his skills are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what they do, what they can't do. It's very clear, you know, with those guys. Spider-Man, you know, this one is just, it's confusing. It's, you know, you walk away with a lot of questions about why they're doing things and could they have done something different or what. But so Shiwan Khan shows up, the last descendant of Genghis Khan, with similar powers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did he gain those powers because he killed the Toku?
The Toku? Yeah. I think he was probably recruited to learn the powers and be redeemed and all that, but he was too
took
evil.
The goblin dagger.
Took the dagger with very Mortal Kombat-esque VFX shots.
Definitely.
Yeah,
some good CGI.
Yeah.
Some good reptile effects there.
Yeah. So, all right, Shiwan Khan, what do we think about him as a character? I really like John Lone as an actor.
Sure. Yeah.
What about Shiwan Khan?
He's all kind of one note, right? Like it doesn't, I don't know. I mean, again, the writing doesn't really allow for much more than just this kind of over the top, poorly facial haired bad guy.
That fake beard mustache.
All the facial hair in this movie is terrible too.
Yeah.
The makeup is another major misfire.
Yeah. And we're not even seeing it in HD.
Yeah, I know, right?
His reveal is I didn't think his reveal was that bad, although it's just kind of silly seeming.
But why does he do it that
like
way?
He
can't get a plane ticket? Like
yeah, exactly. How does it, I'm sure he manipulated people's minds that the shipment is supposed to be wherever it was. But then when they open up the crate at the Natural History Museum, they open up the crate and he's just standing there, just standing there totally fine, ready to go.
Well, and there's like a number of scenes where there's like these people walking through the city in like these 13th century Mongol like suits of armor, and you're like, why is this happening? Like, as an audience member, if I'm to believe that he's clouding the city's mind so they don't see these people walking around in these suits of armor. As an audience member, can we just also not see them in the suits of armor?
It's a little, yeah, I agree with you. I think
You have to know they're there, though.
But like there was a missed opportunity with like Khan being in the coffin and like panning down to see like bags of chips and
Doritos,
Hot mustard Doritos, guys.
Like because he
tarts.
was in that shipment for probably weeks if you really think about it. Like it's hard to get stuff through customs, and
he probably clouded his own mind that he wasn't hungry.
But he could have just taken a flight. Like
right. Yeah. Like why come through the sarcophagus?
Yeah.
Like he could, or just traveled like a normal person on a boat or something.
You got it. When you're a supervillain, you got to do the elaborate thing that doesn't make logistical sense.
And the whole time, the hotel he's been hiding in New York has always been hidden, I guess, for the whole city.
That's okay. Another confusing point. So basically, like he's trying to manipulate the whole. Shiwan Khan's trying to manipulate the whole city, right? Until he takes over, and he is ultimately he's manipulating the mind of Sir Ian McKellen, who's a casual nuclear bomb maker in his office, and so to give Khan the ultimate power, right, of the nuclear weapon. So that's kind of your overall plot. But so I was confused about the building. Like, was it always there? But everyone's mind had been clouded for how long?
Right.
It's like the order. It's like the Order of the Phoenix. There's just like a spell on it so that people can't see it until it's like
and have forgotten about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was sort of in the opening where Tolkien says like things are clouded from men's minds until it's revealed, or whatever I don't know how you phrased it, but it's not like you have to actively zap everyone with your power. Is like they can be clouded and they're just clouded, I guess, until it's revealed. I don't know. But then of course he wants to destroy New York City. Like this is the big problem. Like so
this is a big problem.
He wants to take over the world. The best way to do that is destroy the capitalist pigs of New York. Take them down, and then he could free reign over the entire planet.
Yeah,
I guess.
I mean, what's after New York? Dover,
Jersey City,
Delaware,
Dover,
Delaware.
Yeah,
Iowa. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, Boise.
It's an interesting thing to be New York centric and like, okay, New York's in danger. This is what we got to protect everyone. And we've got Ian McKellen working in the War Department just in a random building in New York City, creating bombs.
Building bombs just right there in the office. And just, when you're done, you just put your tools away, leave it on the table, and go home.
There.
Yeah. It's so weird to see Ian. I forgot he was in this movie, and this is really, I know he was a major, theater performer, but he had not become a big star in the States yet. What was the movie that, was it X-Men? What was something before X-Men? No, it was before.
Lord of the Rings and X-Men.
Lord of the Rings and X-Men, right? I think, were the first.
No, Gods and Monsters was like 98.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was.
And that Nazi one.
Apt Pupil.
Yeah. So using that. Yeah.
Right. So he was in it, but I wouldn't necessarily say that he was like a household name.
Well, I think
after those,
I think he got nominated for Gods and Monsters, so that probably put him to some kind of attention. And then X-Men was 2000, and then Lord of the Rings was right after that. But
right.
So yeah,
I forgot that it's very just different Ian McKellen here. He does not have the bravado that he would have in the rest of his career.
And I would put money down. I don't think you can tell me that there is practical captured sound of any of his dialogue in the movie. Like the entire time he's in his lab, there's like bubbling things, and there's a Jacob's ladder electric thing, and it's totally fake. When they do, I mean, every single line was ADR. There is no chance you have true captured dialogue from him. And he's not even, you don't even get a close up of that guy. You never, that once at any point do you get a close up of Ian McKellen. Like,
yeah.
He's always,
I think you get one and you see a really shitty, poorly done fake mustache.
On when he's
on the balcony. Yeah.
When
he's on the balcony.
Oh yeah.
It's really bad.
But it's fascinating. I'm like, oh my God, like Ian McKellen Ian McKellen had a very long career in theater and then film, and then like coming over to America, here we go. He's starting to go in the mainstream movies. And wow. And he's so poorly just underused. You'd think if you knew what you had, Same thing with Tim Curry.
Right. Tim Curry's
got a huge career.
Yeah, and just a genius, and as underutilized here as he was in Home Alone 2.
Absolutely. It's but that's okay. It's an Alec Baldwin movie. It's an Alec Baldwin vehicle.
But all right, so Ian McKellen is the father of Penelope Ann Miller's character, who her character always felt very light-hearted to me. That when she came on, the movie kind of shifted gears to almost a comedy.
I think that's the intention.
Yeah.
Is it? I was going to say, is it the intention? Like,
there's actually specific written comedy bits throughout the movie, more so in I think the third act. But like, this movie should have been a lot funnier. I think. Like, unfortunately there's no comedy writers involved. Like,
right,
very basic, but they're having a little bit of whimsical time together, and you have comedians in it. I mean, Jonathan Winters is the police commissioner. Like,
yeah.
And Jonathan Winters acts, but
think, and maybe it's just the timing, because think about Jonathan Winters, huge comedy legend.
Mm-hmm.
Penelope Ann Miller's trying to bring some comedy, some lighthearted comedy to it. If only Alec Baldwin had been later Alec Baldwin, you could have had some comedy gold in some of those scenes.
Well, I think he tries to throw it in there a little bit. I mean, like when she wakes up from her nightmare and then he wakes up from his, and he's like talking about peeling his face off. Like, it's pretty funny.
That's a great. That's when I was like, oh, we're going to lean into the jokes now. Like, here we go. Like, that's good stuff. Once she finally like joins the team and they're working together, like,
maybe we're just wrong. Maybe the whole thing is a comedy, and we need to look back at it under that lens.
It's not, though. It's not one of those where they were playing it as a comedy, but it was mismarketed and people didn't get it at the time. It's not. Like, it's not that. I tried watching it that way, and it's just
work.
Not there.
Does it work better than if you play it straight the whole time?
The movie plays it too straight, too long.
I mean,
to let it happen,
I think it might be like, just looking back at the opening when he's just diving around at random things, like full body dives to, I don't know. That's pretty funny.
But it wasn't.
It doesn't make
intended
any
that
sense.
Yeah, I don't know if there were some interesting people attached to this before Russell Mulcahy was. Robert Zemeckis was attached for years.
I could see that
in the mid 80s. Yep. Could have been interesting there. Maybe Michael J. Fox as the Shadow. I'm down for that.
Michael J. Fox.
We just talked about needing it to be like a looming presence. I like myself some Michael J. Fox, but I don't think he's going to be casting any large shadows over anybody.
5'5" Michael J. Fox is not a threat.
Maybe we're going the comedy route for that one.
But hey, I'll take Michael J. Fox in any way I can get him.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
What about
would watch him
what about Kurt Russell as the Shadow?
I could see it.
I mean, his hair would have been the giveaway.
Yeah,
there's no hiding that.
No hiding that. You wouldn't need the nose though. You got the hair.
Yeah,
true.
That could have been interesting. I could see that.
I mean, Kurt Russell,
I think there's just missteps at all points, whether it's casting, design, lighting, pace. I don't know, jokes. Like, there's a lot of misfires that cobbled together. It's kind of okay to watch, but because I don't think it's necessarily like a horrible result. It's not something you want to come back to.
Right.
But I mean, geez, it's just the sum of the whole thing doesn't really add up to something great.
What about So Sam Raimi also, to come back to him, was pitching this for a couple of years as well, and it was rejected, but he was given permission to morph his story into what would become Darkman.
Yeah.
Now, Darkman, well, we'll probably cover Darkman, down the road on this show, but Darkman is what this movie maybe should have been, or could have been.
Yeah.
There's a lot of striking similarities too. I mean, just between
Darkman and The Shadow.
Yeah, for sure. But even like the costume, I mean, granted, Darkman is a lot grittier, and he has to hide his face because it's mutilated, but he hides it with crummy old bandages instead of like the scarf or whatever. But I mean, there's a lot of overlap in the look.
But Darkman is a movie that I think it's aged really well because
I love Darkman.
That one you watch and you see it, you see the humor that's hidden in there. Like that's what we were talking about. That's why Darkman is so much fun to watch now, because it does do that.
Yeah.
I know that movie was mismarketed when it came out, that
for sure
it was pushed as a straightforward superhero movie, and people were, kind of, found it to be strange and didn't latch onto it. But if they had pushed it as a like superhero, I don't want to say comedy, but definitely something along those lines, it might have been might have gone over better. But yeah, God, I loved hearing. Okay, wait a minute. The nuclear bomb also bouncing around like a kickball at the end was, wow, like
no worries.
There's some nice comedy there. That's cute. That was kind of, I was like, I'm not saying it's good, but I was enjoying the whole sequence. I was like, this is funny. Like the bumbling dad, like, you always need a British, well, I guess he's probably not even British in this movie technically, but
no.
Put a mustache on a British guy with a floppy haircut, and you've got or floppy haircut, and you've got a scientist in the in the 40s. Like that's it. So yeah, it was kind of cute. I don't know. I'm not saying it redeems the movie whatsoever. I just liked it. I just think it was funny. It doesn't really even fit with the whole movie at all.
I did like the ending with Shiwan Khan, that the knife comes back into play, that the knife is so at odds with Lamont Cranston in the very beginning of the movie, and is being used against him at the end in that big Hall of Mirrors battle, which was kind of cool.
I did like that. I like the mirrors were neat. That was a great idea.
Then you realize that that Shiwan Khan had been manipulating the mind of the knife as well.
Why not?
Yeah. Oh, is that what that meant?
Yeah. So that's how, once that was revealed, the knife turned on him and joined with Lamont, and then stabbing Shiwan in the head, and then it's revealed Shiwan has had a partial lobotomy and lost the part of his brain where he would manipulate minds with, and he's locked up in a sanitarium.
Yeah. Well, don't forget,
and the doctor makes a play on, you won't need that part of your brain unless telekinesis is a thing that you believe in. Oh gosh, that's a great guy.
But yeah, well, remember, that battle sequence, like the Shadow, becomes more powerful. Now he's not only manipulating minds, he's moving objects. So he throws that shard of a mirror into his head.
Yep.
So if you were to have a sequel, he'd be like just throwing shit with his mind, and
there can be only one.
There can be only one.
And conveniently very similar to the ending of Highlander. A lot of glass shattering.
It's a cool effect. Slow motion glass explosions.
Yeah.
Give me more. If Shark Tale had it, I would love that movie even more. They just didn't animate it.
And there's no better artist to take us out in the closing, credits than Taylor Dane, guys. I'm a big Dane head.
You're a big Dane head. Absolutely.
All right. Should we see how the movie fared in the box office with a little box office glory?
I wanted to note, I think the funny thing is that watching this movie now, again, for the first time since the theater, the first scene where you have Ian McKellen and Penelope Ann Miller together, and there's the split diopter lens showing the split focus. And I think that's the first time I recognized that. I'm sure obviously it's been done before this film, and I've probably seen it. But it's the first time I realized, I was like, that's not how camera lenses work. What the hell is this? Like, some weird like memory came out where I'm watching it. I'm like, that was like a interesting moment of like, what's that movie magic? So I never noticed that, because I don't watch a lot of interesting at 14, but I was 14 at the time this came out. Probably wasn't watching a lot of interesting things. I don't know how long the split diopter lens was around. I mean, but you don't see it typically because it's a lot of work to incorporate.
Spielberg used it. It was really only like specific directors tried to use it. Brian De Palma.
I probably had seen it, but then I'm like, that's not how that works. That's weird. And I think it really stands out as a moment where I'm like paying attention to what I was watching for the in the technical side. So I wanted to bring that up. I couldn't find a place as we're talking about all this silliness of this movie.
But that stood out to you.
It did, and only because I think it stood out like for the first time that like. So if I took nothing else from The Shadow, it's like the first time I noticed that technique, like, which is nothing. It's a nothing thing, but you don't see it because it kind of looks ugly, right? Like,
it's weird. It's a strange visual that it only works when you know how to use it.
Poorly done.
Yeah.
Because your eyes don't do it, so you have to really set it up and light it really the right way to make it feel kind of good, right? Is that right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever used the split lens?
I've never used it personally.
No, never used it personally.
But I don't play with a lot of lenses usually, so.
Let's get the lens guy on the phone.
I'd love some camera experts to weigh in and talk for 45 minutes about it.
We will wait till they call in.
Where the lines are open, camera guys.
We're looking for you.
As of this recording, some camera guys aren't doing a lot because they're waiting for what's going on in the business of Hollywood.
There's a strike happening.
As we record, the strike is continued. But anyway, all right. I just wanted to bring that up because I think like we usually transition toward the end of the show with box office. So, there's a lot of great moments. Banya's in this movie from Seinfeld. Abraham Ben-Ruby from Parker Lewis Can't Lose. They're the two guards at the War Department.
Oh yeah.
Cited them immediately. I'm like, oh my god,
Soup's not a meal. You were supposed to buy me a meal.
Kubiak, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, and that's the thing. This movie just piles up all the sort of character actors and
there's a ton of them. There's a ton of them.
Absolutely, and it's outrageous. I just think it's fantastic too.
Brent, did you say Kubiak?
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's right. It was Kubiak. I couldn't remember his name.
Kubiak,
but I know
from Parker Lewis Can't Lose.
Yeah, Kubiak.
I
remember
he
was on ER forever, and then I used to run into him and like randomly. I ran into him like probably 10 times in whatever, like Target, and like
really,
really? It's so strange, but
and
he's still around.
And Steve Heitner was the other guy who played Banya. So to say their names properly, I don't know. And so you see that, and then it's just kind of neat to see like in bit parts for really Tim Curry and Ian McKellen. It's a wild movie. And then of course longtime legendary Frank Welker voice actor as the voice of the knife.
Oh yeah, totally. It's funny when you can hear Frank Welker's voice.
Yeah, he knows how to do that creature, like
the creature
growl,
high pitched, growling creature sound.
Pretty sure he played Abu in Aladdin.
Look
it up. So
he did.
You need a creature, you call Frank Welker, or you get into a cage with a bear. That's your two options. But anyway, I'm ready for box office.
All right, let's do a little box office glory. The Shadow had a $40 million budget. It opened July 1st, 1994 at number 2.
Oh.
It opened up against the other movies opening that weekend were Blown Away, I Love Trouble, Big League, or Little Big League, and Baby's Day Out. David, that's your top 3 movie for you, I think. Baby's Day Out?
Baby's Day Out, yeah, it's a top 5 now.
Top 5,
these days.
okay.
Yeah, but no, it's a classic. I saw that. I went to the next theater after The Shadow ended, and I went right into Baby's Day Out and became a lifelong fan.
Yeah. You have autographed soundtrack and everything.
100%.
All right. The Shadow opened between Lion King at number 1, which was in week 3, and Speed, which was in week 4. The second week, though, it drops all the way to number 5, and it's kind of a steady decline after that. So opening weekend, 11.7 million. It ends up doing 31.8 domestic and 48 worldwide. So with a $40 million budget, that is not good. And not only that, but we'll get to let's get through a little more numbers, and we'll kind of go into the fallout of it. It ends up number 46 of 1994, right between Nell and Major League 2. Tops at the box office in 94 was The Lion King, Forrest Gump, and True Lies.
Not enough people are talking about Nell these days.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was an Oscar winner. Is that right?
Jodie Foster was nominated. I think.
Nominated at least, yeah.
Yeah.
This was the year I think Forrest Gump took a bunch of
Forrest won.
Right.
I think the part of the fallout of this not working was really, we talked about kind of sealing the fate for Alec Baldwin as your leading action star, and Russell Mulcahy's directing career kind of coming to an end. But also, like, what could have been for this franchise? They were definitely planning a franchise here. So, the toys were out, video games were planned, and immediately canceled and stopped production, never released. I think the toys did come out, but the game did not.
Yeah,
a lot of merchandise. Cool. Yeah.
I would have loved to play The Shadow on Sega Genesis, because that's exactly what would have happened.
Oh, Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo for sure.
Absolutely.
It probably would have been a cool game.
Maybe. And you'd be turning invisible, but then you'd have to just go. You'd probably be a 2D scroller.
Yes.
You're fighting 10,000 bad guys.
A lot of jumping. A lot of jumping and
a lot of jumping.
Punching. But then you go invisible.
Just gonna reskin Contra and just
exactly.
Yeah.
Or like that Super Star Wars and Super Empire Strikes Back on SNES. Yeah. So I don't know. It would be interesting to me though. Now, could you remake this movie now? Could you retell the story of The Shadow? Forget this movie, go back to the original, radio plays. Is there a way to do it now that an audience is going to accept?
Yes.
There's got to be.
There has to be a way.
I 100% think they could do it.
With all the superhero movies that have, between all the Marvel, the MCU stuff, all the DC things that have come out, and what's worked and what hasn't, maybe it is the right time to do this, to give this one another shot.
I don't know. I mean, Captain America was kind of Art Deco-esque in its style. I mean, it was a little bit later time, but I think that worked.
I think as long as you drill down on an emotional side of this story, and you can still have if you want to do a comedy version of it, you can, but you still need to get to like the emotional content and what's driving that character. And if you tell that story, I think you got people.
Yeah, they have to come up with a better origin story than just like weird guy, long nails out in Tibet that is evil for no reason.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. That's just a big misfire to open everything. Like it's just a complete and it's because it's not exactly a short movie. It's like
that's like almost 2 hours long.
Yeah, it's I think just over 2 hours.
Something like that. So it's like they're not wasted time, but they ate up a lot of time where it could have been actually into the character or some of these characters things.
Yeah.
Now, do you do a sequel and have Alec Baldwin come back and just change the tone?
No,
you have Alec Baldwin come back as the villain in this one.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I think
Khan? Nope. That would be
Khan.
And I think you got like maybe a Sean William Scott to play Lamont Cranston.
Oh, yeah.
Stifler gets in there. I don't know.
The cast, The Shadow, starring the cast of American Pie.
Do it.
Henry Cavill. It's going to play the Shadow.
Well, Henry Cavill's Highlander. He's going to be the new Highlander.
Is he really?
Right? Yeah.
Well, shit. There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
Do both.
They're doing a new Highlander?
Oh, yeah. It's happening.
With Henry Cavill?
It's not a sequel, though. That's a reboot.
That is a reboot. Yeah.
Okay.
Total reboot. And we should, when that is, we'll cover that. We'll cover Highlander when the new one comes out.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Put it in the books.
Because the new one better have a Queen-themed soundtrack.
Yeah. Or else it's a instant failure.
Or it's a total bust. All right. Well, that was fun. Looking back at The Shadow, I wasn't sure, how I was going to feel about it now, but unfortunately does not hold up as well as young me wished it had.
There's so much potential baked into the whole thing, and just
it's better than The Phantom.
Oh, definitely, yeah. The Phantom, I think, is the worst of all of these ones.
Yeah,
that was a hot mess too.
It's weird seeing this stuff at a young teenage years and knowing this isn't for me really. This is it's not for me at that. Not that it should have been necessarily. It could have been a good emotional action hero movie, whatever. But I'm not enjoying this the way I thought. They marketed it to me, and that was The Shadow. That was The Phantom. That was Dick Tracy. To be honest.
Yeah. The Phantom actually looks like a purple condom.
Yeah, that's a shame where they hadn't learned to really how to texturize the superhero costumes yet.
Yeah.
So they just patted him out and he just looked like a beefy purple sausage.
Yeah.
Well, no, but when the Phantom came out in 96, right? They had already put nipples on the bat suit by that point, right? So
yeah.
Could be right. Yeah.
Yep. Maybe they didn't have the budget for it.
They just failed miserably on the costume for the.
But The Shadow is overall is better than the Phantom, but
yes,
yeah. Well, if you're an Alec Baldwin fan or a Russell Mulcahy fan, I would check it out. Give it a shot if you haven't seen it already.
All right, I'm in.
Yeah. All right. As we wind down season 5, we want everybody to come back for our season 5 finale on our very next episode. We're not gonna reveal the title here yet, but it's I think we're gonna be going back to the 70s, which we haven't done in a while. But so stay tuned for that. Check us out on social media. We're ReconCinemation Podcast on all the social media platforms. Give us a rating and a review. It always helps the show to get those positive ratings and brings the spotlight of the show up. Thank you to our friends E.K. Wimmer for the theme music. Thank you, Curtis Moore, for the poster as usual. And that's about it. Any other final thoughts on The Shadow, guys?
Nope, that one's done.
Nope,
that's a wrap.
Good stuff done.
David, do you know what evil lurks in the hearts of men and women?
No, because I'm not The Shadow.
Oh, all right. That makes sense.
Or am I?
All right, we'll see you on the next episode of ReconCinemation.
Take care.
Bye now.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows. Armed with quick-draw 45s, the mysterious crime fighter faces the evil Shawan Khan, now ready for battle. But Shadow's hypno-eyes cloud men's minds.
You will obey. I will obey.
But Khan escapes on his serpent bike.
After him, Shadow.
Khan fires first. Shadow cycle pops a wheelie, launching a counter-missile. Each sold separately.
Into the room, Khan.
Or is it? Who knows? The Shadow knows.